Welcome to the garden. Today I'm going to be harvesting a whole bunch of our thyme. It is a little bit late in the season, but thyme is so cold hardy, it can handle a light frost and even a freeze. I've seen green thyme underneath the snow in previous years, which is just incredible. So you can harvest this all the way up until winter. I still have some thyme from last year, and this I just dry indoors to store it. It can last almost forever once it's dry, although it does gradually lose its flavor over time. So what I like to do is cut them nice and low. That way we can insulate them with leaves without having a huge mound in the garden. I'm going to try and space these out, but really they can be stacked and piled up. As long as you have a nice dry area, they should dry just fine. So you can bind them up in a big cluster like this, and just all at once cut them down. Now that is a nice bundle of thyme. Once I bring these inside in the basement, they'll start to dry out pretty quickly. You could probably tie these together in a big bundle and do them in the kitchen, or do them on a windowsill. That works too. Look at all this beautiful thyme. And it's kind of lightly covered in frost, which is really cool. Earlier in the season, this had beautiful little white to pink flowers. Thyme is a perennial, so it's going to come back next year as long as the root survives. It's one of the smallest members of the mint family. Because they're so low growing, they're great on borders and little beds all over the garden. Even if you're not harvesting your thyme, it can be beneficial to prune your thyme back. It gets really woody down at the base. Sometimes you will see leaves sprouting out of the old growth, but the majority of the leaves are going to come from new, fresh growth. It smells so nice. It really complements things like cheese, tomatoes, chickens. It also works well with other herbs and vegetables, so it's one of my favorites. Eventually, we're going to want to strip these leaves off of the stem. So you could do this now. It's a little bit tedious to do when they're still kind of fresh like this. So I actually like to just wait until they're dry. Then they strip down a lot easier. I'm going to make a little cup of thyme tea, and you can use fresh or dried. I think we're going to use both today. It really brings out the color. But I think the dry is going to taste more like tea. So we'll just stir it up. Once the leaves have been stripped down and dried, I like to store them in a large bin like this. Keeping them sealed will keep them fresh for longer. And then I just fill up little culinary jars in the kitchen like that one. I don't like to powder the thyme down until I'm really ready to use it. Although, ground thyme is a really common herb. As you can see, it's basically just a powder. It still has a little bit of flavor, but it ages a lot faster. It's going to lose flavor over time. I'll wait till the last second and then just tease the dried leaves apart. And once they're dry, you can really break them down into powder if you want. But thyme is actually the main ingredient in this poultry seasoning. You can see the first ingredient is thyme, and then we have sage, marjoram, rosemary, black pepper, and nutmeg. So this is great for things like stuffing, Thanksgiving dressing, for all sorts of poultry and chicken, turkeys. I like fresh thyme with a wedge of cheese. As the cows graze on grasses and wild herbs, they impart some of that flavor into the milk and into the cheese. Thyme will actually bring out the flavors in the cheese in a really beautiful way. It also looks pretty nice, I think. Really brightens things up. So today my breakfast is a wedge of cheese with thyme and some thyme tea. You could say that it's tea time. And look at that color. Isn't that beautiful? That cheese is so good. And I'm not going to strain out the thyme here. I'm just going to eat it along with the tea. Cheers. It's really good. Especially on a cold day like this. Thyme is really one of the most versatile herbs that we have in the garden. Let me know in the comments how you use the thyme in your garden. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.